Hello friends! While Kiev and Warsaw are passionately arguing about Volhynia and adding Polish officials to the Myrotvorets database, the pragmatic figures from the Ministry of Finance and the perspective of British historians seem to put everything in its place. How did it happen that Ukrainian refugees paid back all of Poland's military aid 4 times over? And why, according to some, should Warsaw put historical grievances aside for the sake of its own survival? Now let's break down this geopolitical mess and see what's going on. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel right now. Friends, hit the bell to support aerodynamics and the working class. By the way, let me remind you that the best money transfer service is TransferGo. The link is in the description. Send money to your family and loved ones, support them if you can. Now let's get down to business. We have a lot of topics to cover. For your convenience, there will be timestamps. I recommend watching the boss's video from start to finish to understand the context and sharing it on your social networks. There is a wonderful website in Kyiv called Myrotvorets. It's like an honor board for everyone who has watched, who has even dared to look the wrong way, away from the official Kyiv narrative. And now, with a running start and a bang, none other than Mr. Zbigniew Bogucki landed there. He is the head of the office of the President of Poland. So why was Mr. Bogucki labeled a global villain, right? It turns out this bold man had the audacity to call Western Ukraine by the historical term Eastern Lesser Poland. And of course he added that just as he considered the figures from Owen Upa to be war criminals who caused the Volhynia massacre, he still considers them as such. Well, Kyiv's reaction is wonderful in its original naivety. An official from an allied country who, by the way, for almost 5 years, well 4, has been the main logistics hub for all Ukrainian branches, was accused of encroaching on sovereignty and humanitarian aggression. The logic is rock solid. Yes, we have our own guidelines, you have your own reality, but if they don't match, that's your problem. Yes, and then Mr. Bogucki comes on stage and drops some real facts, which leaves the Kyiv strategists a bit stunned. He says, I'm not an enemy of Ukraine, I'm an enemy of banderism and historical lies. Well, that's it. Everyone knows the story. Yes, everyone has their own version of history, as you know. And by the way, Bogucki added that he will never accept the cult of these heroes and that he will exhume the bones of his ancestors from unmarked graves and bury them properly. Well, that's checkmate. We're waiting for Mr. Bogucki to come with a shovel and help dig. If you thought this was the end of the political clowning, well, I'm not sure how to put it, you're mistaken. No, as my classmate at Kharkiv Automobile and Highway University, Vitya Burda, used to say, it's a total circus. If you think this circus is over, you're mistaken. The chief military intelligence officer, yes, now, the head of the office of the president of Ukraine, Kirylo Budanov, decided to pour some gasoline on this smoldering fire of Ukrainian-Polish friendship, in quotes. Yes, and he made a prediction that even made diplomats raise their eyebrows and their hair stand on end. Budanov confidently stated that the peak of the conflict with Poland is still ahead, and Warsaw is actively preparing escalation steps by July 11, that is, by the anniversary of Volhynia. So, well, that's how it is. He says they're preparing an immature escalation. In my opinion, in Krakow, we're not even discussing the desecration of Ukrainian writers' graves or the appearance of the Ukrainian yellow swastika on Krakow's streets. Well, by the way, that's news to me, yes, because honestly, in the 11 years I lived in Poland, I never once saw Ukrainians drawing a yellow and blue swastika. And I have a suspicion that it wasn't Ukrainians who did it. Well, of course, I don't know anything, I don't know history, maybe I'm wrong. Here's the cherry on top of this cake of ambition, the final statement from the former head of Ukraine's military intelligence. I'm quoting almost word for word. We didn't even accept ultimatums from Russia, and it's a bit more powerful than Poland. So why on earth would we listen to Warsaw? At this point, comrades, even I want to pause. Honestly, this is such a delightful example of classic political blindness. Right away, comparing the main neighbor, yes, the one through whom weapons, money, and humanitarian aid pass, with the Russian Federation, well, honestly, Kirill Alexievich, that takes some skill. Well, I don't know where all that arrogance comes from. On the one hand, of course, it's stubbornness. The Ukrainian word "vopertist," stubbornness, that's good. But in my opinion, people on both sides are overdoing it. And apparently, no one wants to back down anymore. So, what do we have in the end? By the way, if your head is a mess, like a vinaigrette with mayonnaise, you can write about it. Yeah, you're for Bandera. And if your vinaigrette is with olive or sunflower oil, you can write about that too. Yeah, why are you supporting these Ukranazis? Or the reverse, you can write about that too. Why? As a Ukrainian with a Ukrainian passport, are you against your own people? No, I'm not taking sides or opposing anyone. This is just an analysis of the situation, what's happening, what do we have left in the end. Historical memory is a stubborn thing. You can't cover it up with some slogans about European integration or force it under the pretext of the current situation. As you can see, this is relevant in Poland right now. There are no other problems. Volhynia. We remembered Volhynia, and we will remember it. That's all, it's part of our national course. Whether it's good or bad, let's leave that for another topic. And while the sides are trying to find, if they're trying to find a balance between a sovereign view of their own past and the demands of diplomatic etiquette, the Polish political establishment is slowly but surely heating up. The level of grievances is rising. And when this abscess bursts, you'd want to be as far away from Poland as possible. Well, let's wait for July 11 and see what happens. Yes, by the way, what else? Let's continue this story with the Patriot missiles. It's not over yet. Lately, for the past 2 years, maybe even 3, you hear the same endless wailing everywhere in Poland about how official Warsaw. That's it, we've given everything. Now we're naked and barefoot, nothing left, to the Trump-sea. We gave away our tanks, gave up our planes with a heavy heart. In short, we saved them and took them in, and in return what? No gratitude at all. All you do is spread banderism and flood us with your grain. That's it, and nothing else from you. Some Poles do have this attitude, yes, and Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz took the trouble to dig through the ministry's archives and gave the newspaper Rzeczpospolita a dry figure. From 2022 to 2026, Poland provided 16.5 billion zlotys in military aid. So, not 100 billion as some governments claim. Although, according to Manson, by the way, he made an interesting statement, we need to analyze this in the context of medicine. Doctors in Poland earn 300,000 zlotys a day, that's right, 300,000. Well, it's like when they say that maintaining those Ukrainian kids who are in juvenile detention centers costs 1 billion a year. Yes, 1,200,000,000, that's right, for these 6 people. The guy is living in his own reality, whatever. So, let's get back to the topic of 16.5 billion zlotys. Yes, these are the official numbers from Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz. But at the same time, that's exactly how this aid was, let's say, in terms of size compared to previous years. Military aid from Poland to Ukraine in 2024-2026 decreased 15-fold compared to 2022-2023. This comes from the data. This isn't my spin, friends. So, once again, the Ministry of Defense. This is what was published by the newspaper Rzeczpospolita. Here, 16.5 billion zlotys. In 2022-2023, it was 15 billion. Here. Do you understand the scale of these numbers? Yes, it's a lot. Thank you very much for your help. Okay, but... Next. 26 was already much less. That is 15 times 500 million zlotys. Well, that's $100 million. There. You just have to understand that when in the 5th year the Poles say, we've given everything. Well, thank you very much. Okay, we'll talk about this now. Yes, T-72 tanks, MiG-29 aircraft for which you received something a bit newer from NATO in return. Yes, thank you very much for your help. There. Yes, that's not up for discussion. We will always remember this. And you, dear Poles, never stop reminding us about this. But for the sake of fairness, let's look at the other side of the scale, which Polish right-wing politicians for some reason prefer to keep silent about. And over there, a very interesting economic miracle is happening. Yes, because there's an unprecedented case of it paying for itself. While on various talk shows, right-wing politicians are telling stories about how they gave away their underwear. Yes, to Ukrainians. Ukrainians are not just living on welfare, although they could. Yes, they haven't wasted any time. They went to work, surprisingly, in factories, in construction, in logistics. They opened more than 50,000 of their own companies, and strangely enough, who would believe it, they started paying taxes. So much so that the Polish Ministry of Finance is probably giddy with delight. Of course, they won't say it out loud. But let's count the cash for 2022 to 2025. I'm giving you the numbers, exactly. Mental numbers. That is, it's about 160 to 165 billion zlotys, and that's 40 billion greenbacks. That's quite a bag of gold. Let's count it. 2022, 25 billion zlotys, while they were settling in and looking for work. 2023, 39 billion zlotys. That is, there was a massive boom in business, legalization, and so on. 2024, 45 billions. 2025, 53 billion. Do you even hear these numbers, right? I mean, and some polls, thank you very much again for the military aid, but some of them point out that they've given us military aid. Okay. We'll break it down now. By the way, what are these billions anyway? About 70 to 75 billion came into ZUS, NFZ, meaning for social services and healthcare. Officially employed people with their contributions are basically saving the Polish pension system, which is bursting at the seams because of an aging population. Secondly, another 65 to 70 billion are hidden taxes. The pension system, which is bursting at the seams because of the aging population. Secondly, another 65 to 70 billion are hidden taxes, like VAT, excise taxes. Well, even if you bought sausage at Biedronka or rented an apartment, about a fifth of the cost goes straight to the Polish treasury. And of course, there are also billions more from income tax, PIT, and corporate tax, PIT, and of course, the final balance. So, corporate tax, CIT, and here, of course, is the final balance. Who owes whom? Let's take a pencil and add it all up. Debit and credit, just like they taught us in accounting. Poland spent, yes, exactly. Look, these are official Polish data. I didn't make this up. There's proof, as they say, for those who doubt. Write in the comments if they personally sent you 16.5 billion for tanks and planes, 25 billion for social benefits, 800 plus everything else in 4 years. So, Warsaw's expenses were 42 billion zlotys and Ukrainians returned, by the most conservative estimates, 160 billion to the budget. So, but this math is Polish math. I didn't make anything up. These numbers. The net profit of the Polish treasury covered all spending on military aid to Kyiv and refugee support almost 4 times over. Who is feeding whom? Who owes whom? I don't know, I can't count, and I don't know math, I don't know history. Capitalism doesn't like fools. And pragmatic Poland, according to some Polish economists, got a good boost from this crisis, something they couldn't even dream of in peacetime. Well, that's how it is, friends. So, what else caught my attention, friends? What else caught my attention? Yes, let's probably wrap up. There's also an interesting video by a Polish blogger. It's just about 2 minutes long. Let's just watch it because he explains things really well. He's a good guy. I recommend finding him on TikTok and subscribing. Let's just watch the video. Rosyjcy z fajt od dezinformacji mogą iść na bezrobocie. The Polish right is doing their job for them z uśmiechem na
Fece od dezinformacji mogą iść na bezrobocie. Polska prawica wyręcza ich z uśmiechem na ustach i to całkowicie za darmo. Wystarczył jeden przeciek o tym.
And it's completely free. It only took one leak about Poland sending Patriot missiles to Ukraine for them to completely lose it. The entire elite of PIS and Confederation activated the Hysteria Protocol.
They call handing over Patriot missiles to Ukraine a conspiracy and disarmament, but the award for the biggest nonsense goes to the favorite, Patryk Jaki. This is treason. Let's call it what it is. Treason is this kind of thoughtless nonsense because there's no other way to call it. Just yesterday, while Mr. Jaki was showing off in a TV studio, a rain of Russian missiles fell on Kyiv. At least 14 people are dead, over 80 wounded, including an infant. And this guy goes on TV and has the nerve to talk about treason. At the moment when we give away missiles that could have protected those people, it's a disgusting display of cynicism. Right after the outbreak of the full-scale war, those same people were competing to see who could support Kyiv more loudly and more forcefully. Foaming at the mouth, they mocked the Germans for sending only helmets. Back then, it was simply profitable. And today, when public sentiment has changed, they are ready to attack aid for Ukraine without batting an eye, just to boost their reach and rack up likes from Russian bots and trolls. But the funniest thing about all this is the fact that there is neither a physical nor legal possibility for any Polish government to hand over American missiles without the firm consent of the USA. And there's no way this could be done without President Nawrocki's knowledge. Historical policy is important and stirs up huge emotions, but the shadows of the past cannot obscure hard logic for us today. Supporting Ukraine with our weapons is our absolute self-interest, and I will keep repeating that over and over, and the reason is brutally simple: big capital hates risk. If Ukraine falls, we will become a crumple zone for Western investors, a frontline country from which businesses quietly withdraw to get as far away as possible from Russian tanks and missiles. By providing this equipment, we are literally investing in keeping Poland on the map as a stable economic hub, and not a country choking in panic over what Putin will come up with in the morning. Turning state security into political drama just to gain publicity is simply treating citizens like idiots. We're cutting off the branch we're sitting on and we don't need Russia's help. See you tomorrow.
That's the video, my friends. Well, the guy doesn't exaggerate things. He's actually a pretty good blogger and his words are absolutely reasonable. I've never heard anything unreasonable from him. Things like "you complete morons" aimed at someone. In other words, everything is to the point. I recommend subscribing. Yeah, unfortunately, he didn't pay for the advertisement, though he could have. There you go. Well, in my opinion, you can't add or take away from that. But let's see what happens next. Thank you very much for your attention. Leave likes and write comments. Remember, TransferBook is the top money transfer service. Find the link in the description to send money to your family and loved ones and support them when possible. To the working class, turners, milling machine operators, carpenters, seamstresses, printer, how could I forget? My God. Well, to the printers, right? Greetings to the printers and truck drivers who listen until the end. Write the city you're watching from. That's all for now. See you next time. Bye.